Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another live session on our GETI Live Talk forum under the hashtag Disruptive Education Movement. As you all know, we have been hosting sessions since last year, and so far we have done more than 1,000 sessions on this platform as an initiative by Global Education and Training Institute under our mentor, Dr. Sunita Gandhi, with the sole vision to transform education by sharing wonderful ideas for change. And we at GETI, we are committed to teachers training and professional development to facilitate learning, teaching, and of course, as I said, sharing wonderful ideas and next practices with the world. You know, this is the unique global movement, that is the hashtag Disruptive Education Movement, to bring the education leaders from around the globe. And as promised, we are back again with our guests today, Ms. Shruti and Ms. Sananda. They are with us for this bomb session today. Something very interesting they're going to talk about. They both are art-based educators from Mumbai and are theatre makers as well. Well, they are also the co-founders of Sphere Arts Education, which is a collective of educators, art practitioners, and applied arts facilitators who are experts in performance arts, visual arts, and film. Well, if I talk about between Sananda ma'am and Shruti ma'am, Sphere has a combined experience of over 20 years of working in the field of arts and education. And they have designed and facilitated a range of different learning experiences and training modules across various institutions in the country. Well, they believe that an arts-based approach to mainstream education is imperative for the holistic development of a learner in the 21st century, as we all understand now. And well, Spear's latest offering is an online workshop for teachers. We will be talking about it in detail. And now, without much ado, I would like to welcome both our, amazing guests today. A very warm welcome to you, Sananda ma'am and Shruti ma'am. And they are here with us to talk on the topic that is, very much discussed, but they have something new for us, something special for us as back to school in turbulent times, how the arts can help. So a very warm welcome to you, ma'am, once again. And as we all know that this COVID-19 pandemic has drastically, altered the shape of our existence. We all know how it has changed our lives. The various lockdowns imposed all over the world to battle its spread, have brought to our lives to a shuddering hall kind of thing. And yes, we all were affected, but I think this education is perhaps the sector that has, has the hardest time coming in terms with the new normal. We all know that. And our school fraternity has really tried hard to, meet the ends, and they have done everything for the education for the students. So we would like to know how the picture is going to be post pandemic, or now when we are going to start. What are your concerns about going back to the school in these times, related to the work that you do about the fine arts?
Thank you. Thanks so much, Preena. That was a very sweet introduction. So we are today talking about going back to school in turbulent times, like you just explained, Preena, and we are looking at it before we talk about how we are looking at it from our own context. We are also cognizant of the fact that there has been a lot of research that has gone into this particular question. How has the pandemic affected us as educators, but also how has it more importantly, how has it affected our learners? One of the very interesting research papers that we found during this time while we were working on building this program was something that was published by the US National Library of Medicine and the National Institute of Health. But this is a research steeped in the Indian context. And some of the findings that we read about while we were going through it was well, like you said yourself, some of it is quite obvious, but it also made us stop in our tracks and think about what can be done about it. So, for example, one of the things that came up was about how the absence of a structured setting that the school environment offers for such a long duration of time, the absence of it, has resulted in a in a disruption in the routine of the child, and more importantly and more worryingly, a lack in their ability to bring more innovative ideas, and their lack in their ability to engage effectively in our academic engagements and our extracurricular activities as well. In fact, one of the predictions of this research says that in a time when the lockdown is over and we go back to physical school, it's presumed the children might actually resist the idea of going back to the school environment, and may find it difficult to re-establish their relationship with their peers, with their mentors, their rapports that they have lost over this time. And as that it's quite clear that as a result of this will and and in a lot of cases probably will have a long-term negative impact on their overall psychological well-being. And this, as you can imagine, was an extremely worrying prediction. But like Sanada mentioned, our meditation at Sphere is a larger We're looking at the sustainability of our practices within education. So while on one hand it's important to understand the impact of this on children, we wanted to figure out how the pandemic has impacted educators in their ability to fulfill their responsibilities in their job roles. So what we did earlier this year, in order to firstly explore and understand the situation, but also more importantly because we wanted to create something that can act as a support system for teachers within the structures, especially post-pandemic. So we went ahead and we sent across an anonymous survey to teachers from around the country, and the results that we found were also quite worrying. For example, what popped up initially and very, very straightforward was that about 65% of the teachers who responded to our survey found that work from home system was actually quite beneficial for them in the larger context of them as professionals. Having said that, though, when we looked at the finer details, there were some other contradictory but also extremely worrying findings. For example, in spite of the fact that 65% of them liked working from home, 90% felt that teaching in the online structure, in an online classroom, was highly challenging. And this is the one that really got our attention. From amongst all the respondents, only about 11% to be very specific, felt that their schools and their institutions had offered them adequate support to cope with the changed dynamics of the working environment. And of course, a lot of them did talk about some of the interesting things that the schools have done for them, but still the numbers point to about only 11% of them feeling like their school systems supported them in the manner that they needed to feel supported by their employers. This got us thinking, and this was something that we wanted to, of course, address and find channels that we can support teachers with. Some of the other details that came out in the survey was that we asked them what the main areas of challenge was for them as professionals, as educators in the workplace, in their work environment during the pandemic, and the results are on the screen. Self-care and work-life balance, the inability to give self-care and the misplaced work-life balance were featured, not surprisingly, highest amongst the concerns. In fact, a lot of the personal interactions that we had during this time with teachers that we worked with, we also realized that, while last year a lot of us were going gung-ho about technological learning and growth, technology fatigue seemed to be one of the lower end of the spectrum when it came to their concerns, physical and technology-based fatigues. But it was more of the intangible and the more personal, emotional, and social interaction level that teachers found were most challenging during this time. We dug a little further and we asked them what is the one form of support that they wish, like a laundry list, a wish list of support mechanisms that they hope that their school institutions could have or will do moving forward in the future. And some really poignant and very emotionally charged responses came through. For example, many of them wish that the schools had given them more attention and care, or a lot of them, in fact, mentioned the number of working hours teachers had to spend during this time, cumulatively, from planning to the actual facilitation to online meetings to group discussion time that they had to put together with their departments. Cumulatively, a lot of them found that the number of hours that they were working had doubled, if not tripled, over this during the pandemic. Someone actually mentioned that they found themselves working almost 24 hours in a day, which, as we can imagine, is a big red flag, a big sign of teacher burnout, a term that is very, very popular now within the space of education, teacher burnout. And the one statement that really stayed with us was this. Someone mentioned, it was an anonymous survey, so someone mentioned that they wished the school would extend the understanding that the world right now is not business as usual. This is an understanding that the large part of the corporate sector has slowly imbibed into their functioning. But this teacher felt that the school sector hadn't yet imbibed the idea that, in the context of a pandemic, we are not really business as usual, and we cannot expect our teachers also to step up and pivot so quickly and come back into the world as if nothing has gone wrong. And that was something that really made us step up and take notice, because this is the area that Sphere likes to we live in, quite literally. The teacher experience and the child's experience of learning is our primary mulling. And we felt that if this is the situation we are in, where teachers are feeling less supported, we need to find channels and methods in which we can offer them the support that they need at this point. A lot of our mullings have also been about children, not to say that we haven't thought about them. Sana is going to take you through some of the thoughts that we had in this realm.
Thank you, Shruti. Now, when we start to think about the main areas of challenge for students in the pandemic, and bear in mind when we say students, the age, ranges right from 3-year-olds who come to preschool, right up to 18-year-olds who are leaving school. And some of the concerns that we started to think about and dig deeper are, as you see on the screen, sense of space and time. How does this get disjointed? After months together, when you step out into the world, you may feel a sort of unbelonging. You may feel that the world is sort of closing in on you. Just addressing this as a start point is important. Understanding that we respond to space actively as human beings, and we negotiate with space actively. And now, currently, our children don't have that aspect in their lives at all. Sense of safety within an environment. Yes, you're at home, you're safe, but you also start to understand a sense of safety based on the relationships that you address on a day-to-day basis, based on the interactions and the nature of interactions that you have. Someone may simply have a thriving social network within their school systems. Being able to share a space with a peer, being able to share a look and have a complicit moment of understanding, have a giggle, be able to, as a teacher, see the child fully and notice that, oh, they're very nervously tapping their foot today. Maybe I should look into why that is. Or their energy is feeling a little off, or their pulse is feeling a little off. This vocabulary has been stripped off from us at this point of time. The last one that I really want to focus on is a sense of intuition, because we don't necessarily talk about intuition in the realm of education or in its formality. But intuition is something that we lead our lives with. Sense of people, sense of relationship, understanding how we respond to something, what I should say, happens because of the people we negotiate with, because of the places we are thrown into. And as adults, we of course have a much more refined sense of intuition to deal with the world, to access it. But imagine the child who, for the last 2 years, has not had the environment where they might be able to sharpen this idea. So I hope that throws a little bit more light into how our worlds as people and of course as children has been affected during this time.
Right. I think the if I talk about the corporate employees, so for example, they were already working on computers. Many of them were on laptops at the office and work from home. The nature of their work that didn't fundamentally change, I think. But the education sector has, arguably had to make that kind of biggest jump, going from its traditional chalk and blackboard normal to a new normal of a fully digitalized virtual classroom experience, I think. And schools and colleges were not initially equipped to teach virtually due to these factors. So, what do you think? How the schools can actually prepare for this?
Yes, that's a very important. I mean, we were leading up to that. That is the well, first things first, these conversations need to happen within the school environment. That's always the first step towards any kind of change. But while the conversations are happening, we also need to start with the realization that these are necessary systems that we need to put into place at this point in the structure of our schooling system. Sananda?
Um, Now, when we think of schools, and we want you to think of schools far and wide in different environments, urban and rural, all together within our context across the country, we would like to start off with bringing your attention to an article that was actually written in earlier this year in August by Dr. Sunita Gandhi, who is the founder of GETI Learning as well. And she
In
brought
April, just to
in
correct you, it
April,
was April
sorry,
21. Yeah.
April 21, which she brought light to the conversation that within the school system, in the existing system, we need a shift, we need a move. We need to look at the interpersonal, and we need to focus on things like how is gratitude looked at within teachers, within children? Are we thanking each other for the efforts that we're making? Are we celebrating small joys? Are we celebrating small achievements? Because in the academic environment, there is already a system and a sort of linear system of how achievement is looked at. So she proposed that the everyday care in interpersonal interactions needs to be looked at differently. Now, to add to this, she also mentions ideas of listening. How do we listen? How do we value listening? As teachers, a lot of our interactions tend to be derivative, right? So we're asking a question, we're listening, but we're waiting for an answer that we want. Are we really paying attention to what the child is saying and finding value within that? Becomes an important aspect that she also mentions. Now, to add to this, we also want to bring in the idea that if schools want to be able to be prepared for the time that is to come, this is the time to do it, of course. And the way forward also is to bring in structures of care within the school system, which means from every aspect of stakeholders, from the child, starting right at the child, to your teachers, to your leadership, to your founding, to your funding agencies. Building a language that runs across is very important. And we do feel that bringing in the arts at the center is a starting point where you can start to be able to allow people in channels in how they can develop this sense of care and this sense of communication with care. I hope that sort of brings in a little bit of understanding towards that. Um, just to add to this idea, we're going to talk a little bit about what our dreams are, what we think that we should be focusing on, and how what we should all be gathering forces to sort of move towards. Shruti, you want to continue into this?
Sure. So, taking forward from what Sananda was talking about, when we are saying building a system and putting and percolating these ideas into the very fabric of the school structure, what we are talking about and what we hope to have and what we dream for is a time when schools are a consciously creating safe spaces for all the stakeholders, everybody that Sananda mentioned, as well as parents, everybody who is a part of the universe of the schooling network, allowing them to have a safe space to bring their whole selves. And this is a concept that is quite popular within the corporate sector already, being able to come to work as my complete being, no matter who I am, how I am, with all my emotional upheavals. Allowing for this to happen within the school space with our students as well as with our teachers is probably one of the first things that schools and school leaders need to start mulling about. I'm sure they already are. We also need to consciously building channels for open communication and for compassionate communication. We know in the last 1.5 years how much all of us have been called upon to be compassionate, to be empathetic, to understand the experience of other people in order to make sense of one's own. Being able to bring these exact same skills within the school structure is going to be very, very necessary moving forward, because we're coming, once we do go back to real world schools, we are going to have students and children who are coming back who have been through extremely complex traumatic experiences, and being able to allow them to have a conversation about it, to talk through it, to be able to openly articulate what they are going through at any given point of time cannot be a negotiable idea anymore. And in order to be able to do that, and this is where it becomes quite essential, in order to be able to do that, schools, school leaders, school systems, and the teachers need to be committed to the idea that continued learning is necessary, and that too in contemporary context. When I say contemporary context, what we mean is that right now we're at a stage where the rest of the world is has moved ahead in the ideas within their ideas of what constitutes education and what constitutes 21st century education, and we back home have been working our way towards growing into those understandings. We have our own logistical challenges, so nobody's challenging that, but the time has come now that we can no longer wait, because we are at a point where the whole world has gone through a similar experience, and we need to be able to build the structures and the scaffolding required for our young people, for our learners, for our students and children to be able to move into this contemporary world of learning and contemporary ways of understanding the world. And in order to do that, schools need to put in systems that offer platforms and offer channels of continued learning within the contemporary context, such as, I mean, if you stop to look at, when we say contemporary context, we mean anything and everything from mental health to inclusion and diversity within the world and within the workplace. How do we approach larger ideas of identity of self? These are all larger conversations that are happening in the world that needs to percolate within the system, especially keeping in mind the aftermath of the pandemic. So this is our wish list, our laundry list, our dream list for what schools around the country should be in a post-pandemic, in a real world environment. So Preena, that's what we were thinking about in terms of what schools and school leaders can do at this point in time.
Right. There's so much that you shared, how they can actually come up with a structure for this. So you just mentioned in the previous slide about the arts, where it was written when you talked about the everyday care for interpersonal interaction and structure for care in school system, how the arts can actually support or can help in this.
Yeah, well, that's where that's pretty much the reason why we do anything, the arts. For both Sananda and I, being lifelong arts practitioners and art-based educators, this is something that is primary to the way we view the work that we do and the way we view the world. But before we get into talking about how schools can, how the arts can help schools, we need to also get clear about, get on the same idea of what we mean when we say the arts. Because traditionally, especially in the school structure, the arts has been viewed as a form-based learning or a skill-based learning. We go into an arts class, a visual arts class, or a drama class to learn how to draw, to learn how to emote, to gain confidence, so on and so forth. This arts has been a means to an end forever. Let's put it that way. We look at it in terms of the form. Are we learning the form of music, or are we learning the form of visual arts, or are we learning the form of performative arts? But what we are trying to propose and what we're trying to infuse into the idea of learning is arts as a language, much like English or Hindi or mathematics as a language to understand the world. Arts is also a language to make sense of the world, to make sense of the very human experience. If you look at the very crux and the very purpose of art, it is there from hundreds and thousands of years, from the first time a cave painting was painted in, during caveman times. Art was used as a way to make sense of the world that we are experiencing outside, and pass on a certain kind of learning and understanding to anybody else moving forward. And that understanding is also a very personal understanding. I see a bison who is chasing a deer, and I draw it on the wall, and I see the bison as ferocious. But somebody else who has seen the same bison might have thought the bison was just hungry. They might paint it very differently. So being able to bring our individual selves into what we create is something that is inbuilt within the very narrative of the arts. The very structure of what the art stands for is about being able to make sense of the world as an individual and be able to communicate to the world as an individual. So being able to the invitation that we are asking right now, we are bringing forward, is to be able to channelize the potential, the larger potential of the arts within the learning structure, within the learning framework, and not look at it just as a form or a skill that one needs to get better at, but as a pathway towards discovering much, much more, and discovering many other perspectives towards the world that we're inhabiting. Some of the very basic ideas that the arts brings forth, for example, the idea of the concept of interpretation. When I look at something, how do I make meaning from it versus how does Sananda make meaning out of it? How does she interpret, bringing her own lived reality versus me bringing my own lived reality, and us coming together on a shared platform, communicating to each other, collaborating, discussing, analyzing these ideas, creatively coming up with a solution to the problem that has all of these life skills are very much embedded and ingrained in the way the arts is observed, two, the way the arts is learned, and the way the arts is done. All of these ideas are ingrained in everything that we do with the arts. If you're going out to a visual arts, to let's say you're going to a museum to see an art piece, you are making interpretations when you're looking at that painting. You are finding channels of compassion and empathy for the artist or for the subject of that painting. You are imagining, you're looking at something creatively, you're articulating about it when you go and tell your friend about it. Just in the act of observing art, we experience all of these things. And similarly with learning and doing. At this point, it's also very important to point out this one aspect, that in our education structures, we give a lot of importance to learning, to gaining knowledge, to seeking understanding by learning. And by doing, we do a lot of practicals, we do sums, we have our laboratory spaces. But how often do we consciously create channels for observing as an act of learning and understanding the world, or making meaning in the world? We in our pre-primary years, for example, a lot of things happen around observation. We ask our children to observe the leaves, we ask our children to observe the clouds. But even there, observation is used as a means to an end. We observe the clouds in order to put them into shapes. We observe the leaves in order to tell what color they are. We observe a flower to say whether it is a bud or whether it is a complete bloom. There is a ends attached to the observation. We're always seeking a certain answer.
Need of sorts.
A derivative need of sorts to the act of observation. Whereas within the arts, the act of observation itself is a learning, itself is a gaining of perspective, itself is a broadening of our own understanding.
If I'm standing and is valued.
And the entirety of the observation in itself is valued. You need not look at a painting and go back home and draw. That's not needed. You just spent 15 minutes looking at a painting on a wall in a museum, and that's enough in its entirety. And giving value to that experience, or what we gain, what we learn simply by the act of observing, is an understanding that we are yet to completely explore within the school structures. And that is another invitation that we bring that in, because in the last 1.5 years, a lot of the things that we've understood about the world has come from observing the news, observing what's happening outside our houses, observing what's happening inside of us. A lot of us have gone through internal turmoil of all kinds, and we've we've had to necessarily learn this art of observing ourselves. What we are saying is that these learnings need to become part of the education structure. If we are working with children in the ages of 5 all the way to 15, 16, 17, are we equipping them with the tools that they require, not just to negotiate the work world that they will be entering, the workforce that they will be entering in a few years' time, but are we empowering them with the tools they require to negotiate the social and emotional worlds that they are inhabiting right now in the present, and the really complex ones that they're going to come to face when they're older, when they're adults, when maybe another pandemic strikes? Who knows what the world is going to go towards? Are we equipping them with the skills required to be able to do this, what our teachers have done this time: pivot, adapt, improvise, and learn new ways of being? Are we equipping our children consciously for this? And that's where we feel that the arts has it's an untapped potential. It really is something that we all have had in our school. We had a lovely art teacher, or we've had a dance teacher, one off here and there, who's helped us blossom, who's helped us bring out, who's given value to our observations, who's given value to our inputs, and we cherish those relationships. Our invitation is to try and bring those experiences into as many teacher-child relationships as we possibly can, making space for them to explore the intangible aspects of themselves and learn and grow through those learnings as well. And that's the proposition we have in terms of how the arts can help. Sananda?
While we're also saying that, just to add to the many layers that Shruti's opened up in this conversation, we also want to say that schools have existing systems. We know that there are teachers and dance teachers, and there are one of you might watch a film.
Counselors.
You have counselors in place. What we are proposing is to deepen this. What we are proposing is to look at like Shruti started off, look at it as a language that you're teaching as a means to access the world. And the moment that perspective shift happens, all of the things we are proposing and our dream list and our wish list becomes reality. And that's the work we do. That's the work we are, of course, committed to. And to go to the beginning of this conversation, where we started our research from, where we started, when we really started to work on our concerns, we took our time with our research, and over about 4 to 5 months actually, we developed this workshop called An Educator's Pause, which is now live and doing several batches. A new batch begins on the 7th of August. This is a workshop for educators to find a language of compassion and care. And this has come to us as an urgent need that we needed to understand. We needed to get a pulse from the teachers that we work with and others. And we've had generous contribution from the working teachers that we interact with and they interact with in turn. And we've been able to start off the conversation. We've been able to start putting out solutions and ideas out there. So we do invite you to think about where in your institutions, in your own life, if you're an educator, you might need this. You might need a moment to pause. You might need a moment to rework and recalibrate. And we do this through the arts. And we can promise that this is something that works at a very subliminal level, because no art practice begins without putting ourselves out there and putting ourselves in the center of it. So thank you for listening to us. And we really do hope that you, within your institutions, within the spaces that you work, are able to just push and give new value, give more value to the existing systems of art that you have, to just for a second think that this could be much more valuable if it's put in the center of it, if it's just given the value to say this is enough, this is full, this can be something meaningful for a learner within the environment of a school.
Well, thank you so much, Sananda ma'am and Shruti ma'am. I think that was to the point, talking about the skills much required for the students, for the well-rounded and well-prepared learners and leaders, I would say, for the future. Because as you rightly said, we don't know what's going to happen next. We were not really prepared for this pandemic, the way it came and changed our lives drastically, as I said in the beginning. We had no clue about this. And I think this is the time when we really need to focus on these skills, as you explained, by this observing, learning, and doing structure. It was
In fact, to add to what you were saying, Preena, this is we are actually at this very interesting juncture where we are going into another year of online learning, and hopefully in the next academic year we'll be coming back to real world spaces. So this gives us an entire academic year to prepare
Yeah.
ourselves, to put our systems in place,
Yes.
to have these conversations, to bring this vocabulary. So of course it will impact us real time in our online classes that we are going back into this year, but it will have long term impacts. Once again, we shouldn't find ourselves at a time when we are suddenly now 2 months later we are opening up schools, so now we have to go back in and we have to suddenly pivot back to the real world life. We shouldn't be putting our teachers and our students through that experience once again when we do have the
Right.
time to put in these systems, to give it the time it needs for these ideas to seep into, percolate into everyday interactional and behavioral changes within the system. And while at the same time, that's what the arts does, while on one end it takes you into the finer, deeper lived experiences and everyday interactions, it also takes you to the broader ideas and concepts that helps you explore larger things like identity, like personal well-being from a much larger umbrella, while at the same time giving value to the smaller details. And this dichotomy of bird's eye view and worm's eye view, Sananda loves this term, bird's eye view and worm's eye view, this dichotomy we have found in our experience plays out and exists almost exclusively only in the arts. When you take any other mainstream or pure subject, it's only when you reach when you reach extreme levels of academic excellence can you see the minute details and the macro details as well. But within the arts, right from the word go, we're looking at the world through the minute lens as well as through the macro lens, and these experiences also are part of the arts-based learning environment. So right now is that time where we need to give our learners as well as teachers both these ideas to say, okay, here, this is the world as it is outside, this is who you are, this is where we are. How do we broaden our world to include all the wonderful ideas and concepts that are floating about that our children need to be exposed to, that is going to add value to their lived experience and that is going to make them
True.
into deeper thinking and more compassionate adults when they grow up. These are the ideas that we live with, Preena, and these are the ideas that we are
I
bringing
think
forward in our workshops as well.
beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. I mean, I can imagine you were talking and I was out there in the world. And it's not long ago that arts education in schools was thought like, it was like a luxury, and arts classes were really cut off from the curriculum to make room for, more time to prepare for the standardized tests and covering the content and
Yeah.
the regular part,
Yeah.
taking care of the syllabus and tests and assessments. But I think current situation is actually showing how crucial the arts integration is to,
Yeah.
creating the well-rounded, well-prepared learners, as I said.
I mean,
But
the
one,
pandemic has, sorry to interrupt
Sure.
you, but the pandemic has
sure,
quite forced our hand to even do away with the systematic tests. We have cancelled exams and tests left, right, and center in this last 1 year. So we know
that we
that
never thought
now,
about.
yeah, we cancelled exams left, right, and center. So the standardized tests, we know that in extreme situations is not an essential. Standardized test is not essential when the world is falling apart, but personal well-being is essential when the world is falling apart. That's what we're trying to say.
True, true. And we always also talked about, so many good things. But if I talk about the challenging part, where this is one last question I would like to ask you.
Sure.
Like, we really need, more qualified teachers for this. They need proper training, as you said. You're already on with the workshops, and we are talking about the stakeholders, in the education fraternity, where we need support from all of them. As Sananda ma'am said, already mentioned this, that yes, we do have the existing education system, but we really need to work on it. So one one thing that is there, I would like to know from you, that how the parents are, giving importance to this, because for them it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
have heard since beginning it's a waste of time, and we really do need to focus there, but to more on the other things. How
Thanks
do
for
you
bringing
find
that up,
this
Preena.
point?
That's a good question. Yeah.
That's a very important question.
I would like to start with saying that I think the change really does start when the environment changes, right? So, look, it's just like that. When you're in a space, so you're in a school or you're in an institution that values the arts, that right from the moment when you're being admitted into the school to say that, look, we give these many hours and we take it very seriously, how many hours you've put in for, did you miss, how many gallery museum visits did you miss, or did you, we give value to you showing up for these experiences. It starts with that. And I think for parents, look, for every parent, the child's well-being and their preparedness for the world matters. Again, if the people who are informing parents, and of course there are parents who might have lived experience themselves to know the value of the arts, but that percentage is small, like you said, giving them the confidence, the trust that this is important, not only for your child's preparedness for the world, which is usually the conversation, right? You want them to do very well in competitive exams so that they're prepared for the workforce. If the conversation just shifts, pivots a little bit to say, this is important for your child's well being right now, right here, then
And in the future as
and
well.
in the future, yeah, then it starts to shift. But people who are
Yeah.
advising have to be able to bring value to it.
It is a matter of advocacy at the end of the day. One of the schools that we worked with, this is still the pre-pandemic world where we were working with the school for over 3 years. One of the things that is part of the way our programs are structured is an intrinsic understanding between us and the school leaders that there is going to be an active mechanism of advocacy within the school system for the parental body. It took us 3 full years, starting from an environment which was exactly as you described it, Preena, where parents were like, "Iski kya zarurat hai?" There is our children are going to be wasting time. They're not going to learn world skills or work related skills. But the head of school was at it throughout every single time that there were parental gatherings with any kind of artistic which we were running a drama program and a visual program and a library program. Every time there was an arts based engagement in the school, he made it a point to have a conversation addressing the need for it, telling them about how the children have developed, bringing an educator's perspective into the parental world. See, at the end of the day, it's easy for us to say parents don't buy into it, but then we also need to see that parents are looking at it from an individual lens. They are saying, "मैं मेरा बच्चा." But as a school, we're looking at the larger well-being and the larger systems that we need to put into place for a holistic learning and well-being of all children involved. So that conviction, we believe, needs to come from the learning institutions and not from the parents. And that also, like you said, every school has one or two parents who are like, नहीं मुझे अपने बच्चे को library लेके जाना है, नहीं मुझे अपने बच्चे को, I want to show them, I want to take them to children's film festivals. There'll always be one or two parents, but they don't have enough voice to be able to convert the rest of the parental body. But the school systems do. The school management does. They have those channels with the parent teachers bodies as well, where they can bring these ideas onto the table and say, hey, the world has changed. The way we need to look at education needs to change. The way you need to look at the growth of your child also needs to change. And if my guesswork, calculation, and prediction is not far off, I do believe that parents today in 2021, sitting in July, post 1.5 years of living through the pandemic, I definitely have a feeling that they are going to be much more open to the idea of their children spending time for their own personal well-being than they used to before, because they're seeing it firsthand in their homes. They're seeing their children going through all kinds of ups and downs. So I think if a school approaches them and says, hey, we are bringing this program into the school so that we can ensure that your child's well-being is maintained, your emotional and social well-being is maintained, I don't think any parent is going to come and say, no, I don't want my child to be emotionally healthy. That doesn't seem very likely. Again, to reiterate, it is the manner in which us as stakeholders within the school system present it. If we are saying हम arts कर रहे हैं ताकि बच्चों को hobby मिले, तो yes, parents will say, I don't want them to spend time on hobby. But the minute we turn it around and say we are introducing an arts program in order to develop the finer, nuanced, subtle world learning skills and their ability to cope with trauma and their ability to deal with interpersonal problems and their ability to creatively solve any challenges that they comes their way, and the arts is the means to do that. If the school is convinced about it and they're able to present it that way, I think the transition won't take much time. Of course, it won't be overnight. It will take some time, and we'll have to prove the point that we're trying to make. but change will come through, and we've seen that happening within the schools that we've worked with. And it has been quite transformational, with the number of the parents approaching us by the end of 3 years and talking to us openly about what they have seen individually in their child, and the growth that has come through in their child just by virtue of them being in these 3 art programs has been, this is proof of the pudding for us, and it's really, really heartwarming to see our work being received by the absolute end, the parental body, and not just the school and the teachers and the children themselves, but the parents as well. So yeah, it is doable if we know what we're doing, and we know why we're doing it, and we're doing it for the right reasons, and that's the important part. If we're doing it to have a checklist to say, in order for me to have a certain level of school, I need to have a library with 4,000 books. Or in order for me to be able to do this, I need to have an arts program. If I'm doing it as a checklist thing, then yeah, it's a little shallow. But if we are steeped into the idea of understanding the power of the potential of arts in learning, and we come from that perspective, I don't think any parent would have a problem.
That's true.
I'm being very,
yes,
yeah. I'm being kind of overconfident
Good
about it.
things.
I understand, but then I do believe it is true.
I mean, that's what we
I
do, though.
think,
We've been at it.
yeah, it's not about overconfidence, but I think you know the importance, you understand, and as you said, that
We've seen it.
schools need to understand. And it's kind of, when you are trying to convince someone, I don't know if this is the right word, if you're trying to convince someone, you need to be convinced first. You need to understand
Absolutely.
the importance of that particular thing. So maybe then you can put it in a better way ahead. And I think, as you said, this transformation will take time. So yes, there's this very famous quote: "Good things take time." So definitely we are on the way. We are on this journey. There's a long way to go, and definitely we'll achieve. And instead of taking arts as a standalone subject, teachers can. I mean, through this idea, this approach, it can be used as a dance and
Yes.
drama and the visual arts to teach any subjects in the classrooms. I
In
think
fact, one of our previous
slowly
workshops,
gradually.
just once again, I'm interrupting. I'm very sorry.
Sure.
Tina.
No
Um,
problem.
One of our previous workshops, the one just before this, once we came into the online world, was to find was a workshop for teachers to be able to use the arts in their online classrooms, irrespective of what subject that they're teaching. And we worked across multiple batches, and we worked with close to about 200 250 teachers, enabling them with these with arts-based methodologies that are adaptable to the online platform, but at the same time also adaptable for real life classrooms once they come
And
back into the real
approachable
world
by
as well.
non-arts people.
And approachable by non-arts. None of the teachers, about 95% of the teachers who attended the workshops had zero arts background. But at the end of the day, we know, and we have extended contact with them. So we understand that they have been using it even over the last 8 months since they attended the workshop. It has enhanced their classrooms. So while we did look at the logistical and the technical and the facilitation aspect and the pedagogy aspect of it, starting this year, we realized that we need to shift our focus to the more experiential and the emotional aspect of being a teacher. Not just about the pandemic, but the emotional aspect of being a teacher. You're interacting with children every single day. You have personal relationships with them. Tomorrow, when we come back into our classrooms right now, there might have been children who have experienced trauma from really close quarters. People in their lives have passed away. They have seen their families going through extreme trauma during this time. And these are the children that are coming back. These are the teachers who are coming back. Teachers have personally experienced all kinds of extreme levels of trauma, and they're coming back into the workplace with the lived experience and the memory of that inside of them. Our proposition is to bring the arts onto the into the mainstream, into the limelight, and enable both of them, teachers, learners, school leaders, everybody, to be able to come into the school environment once again with the lived experience, but at the same time creating channels for them to take those experiences and learn from it. And the arts allows for that to happen very, very organically.
Wow, I think now people can. There are so many takeaways for people. It's not only about the arts or just in a very layman language, I would say, just painting and things. But there is much more that you can, learn from this particular session that we just we just discussed so many things about it. And working in arts, it's not as I said, only winning, but it's helping the learners to develop the kind of creative problem solving skills, understanding something, the concepts visually, and sort of making them more easy to understand. There are
Yeah.
so many things to
Yeah,
have if we
I mean,
talk
that's
about
just
the
visual
education
arts.
part.
The minute we
I
bring
think
in, the
wonderfully
minute we bring in
explained.
theater, yeah, thank you. That was just visual arts. I mean, of course, the minute we bring in
Yes.
theater, the minute we bring in film, there are many other kinds of avenues of expression and understanding that comes into the picture with the different forms of arts as well. So yeah, that's our proposition, Preena, and that's what we're doing. Just to put the word out there, if there are any educators, any school leaders who are watching this, if you would like to explore working with Sphere, you can find all our details on sphereartseducation.in, and details about the workshop are also up on Facebook as well as Instagram. So you can access those details and get in touch with us in case you'd like to work with us.
Yeah, come have a chat.
I am sure. I'm sure they will definitely, because if you have missed it, you have missed it something big time. No worries. In case the viewers have any questions, they can definitely post it in the comment section. Sananda ma'am and Shruti will definitely try to answer them maybe later on sometime. And as I said, it's not arts is not limited to this drawing and painting. I think you are missing it big time if you're not understanding the value of this, about what Shruti ma'am and Sananda ma'am explained in detail. And they also mentioned about their online workshop happening for teachers across the country and in different education institutions, be it colleges or schools. So I think you can definitely visit their website by the name sphereartseducation.in, and you can definitely find out so many things out there. So I think overall, fabulous session, very informative, very insightful. Thank you so very much to both of you for joining us today and giving us your precious time and talking on this particular topic that is much needed, and somehow it can change the lives of students, and I
We
think
believe
everybody
so.
who is really willing to be a part of it. Yes.
We
And
believe
thank you
so
to
for
Getty
sure. Yeah.
Learning for giving us this platform and opening
Uh,
up these conversations. Thank you so much.
for the second time, we're on the
Pleasure
Getty
is all
platform, and
ours.
it's really lovely the work that Getty has been doing, especially during the pandemic. It's quite commendable. Thank you so much for creating this platform for
Thank you.
educators and education. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure is all ours, ma'am, and not the second time. We will definitely connect soon with another such informative session. For
Thank
sure.
you.
So yes, so thank you so very much
Thank
once
you.
again on
Thank
behalf of our
you.
entire team, and thank you, dear viewers. Keep spreading this positivity, and you can share this video with your friends and colleagues as much as you can. As I said, there is so much to take away. What all Ma'am Shruti and Sananda just discussed about today. So yes, with this we come to an end. Don't forget to watch our detox also as a part of the hashtag Disruptive Literacy Movement, an initiative by Global Green Literacy. Don't forget to watch the detox as well. So yes, till then, take care, stay safe. Thank you, ma'am. Bye bye, everyone.
Thank
Take care.
you. Thank you. Bye.